Here he is coming out.
Let's go to Mar-a-Lago in Florida. We're hearing Trump speak right now. Let's take a listen.
For, in my opinion, the country, a New York State judge just ruled that he's crooked as you can get. And a lot of people expected something like this, but not for the amount. But this is a very dishonest man. This is a man that's been overturned already on this case 4 times. But a crooked New York State judge just ruled that I have to pay a fine of $355 million for having built a perfect company. Great cash, great buildings, great everything. It affects New York. It's mostly talking about New York, where we have a totally corrupt attorney general. She campaigned on the fact that I will get Trump, I will get Trump. Everybody's seen it. Letitia James, they've all seen it. Well, we'll be appealing, but more important than that, this is Russia, this is China, this is the same game. It all comes out of the DOJ, it all comes out of Biden. It's a witch hunt against his political opponent, the likes of which our country has never seen before. You see it in third world countries, banana republics, but you don't see it here. So I just want to say this. You build a great company. There was no fraud. The banks all got their money, 100%. They love Trump. They testified that Trump is great customer, one of our best customers. They testified beautifully. And the judge knows that. He's just a corrupt person. And we knew that from the beginning. We knew it right from the beginning because he wouldn't give it to the commercial division. This judge thought Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, and it's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times that amount. So we realized that. He ruled against me before he even got the case. He ruled against me. He said I was guilty. He didn't know what I was guilty of before he even got the case. And Letitia James, that's another case altogether. She's a horribly corrupt attorney general, and it's all having to do with election interference. There were no victims because the banks made a lot of money. They made $100 million. And by the way, I paid approximately $300 million in taxes as the migrants come in and they take over New York. I paid over this period of years over $300 million in taxes. And they want me out. Oh, let's see if we can get them out. These are radical left Democrats. They're lunatics. And it's election interfering. So I just want to thank you for being here. We'll appeal. We'll be successful, I think, because, frankly, if we're not successful, New York State is gone. People are moving out of New York State. And because of this, they're going to move out at a much faster rate. They used a statute. It's a consumer fraud statute that's never been used for a thing like this before. They used it on me because I'm running for president. I'm beating Biden by a lot. We're beating not only the Republicans, we're beating Biden by a lot. The poll came out today, we're up 20 points on Biden. If I weren't running, none of this stuff would have ever happened. None of these lawsuits would have ever happened. Nothing would, I would have had a nice life. But I enjoy this life for a different reason. We're going to make America great again. These are corrupt people. These are people that shouldn't be allowed to do the things they do. And they're using this as weaponization against a political opponent who's up a lot in the polls and always will be, because I'm competing with a man who can't put 2 sentences together, who doesn't know what he's doing. And we're heading into a third world war because of this guy. We have to win this election. They're doing everything possible to step in our way, but we're not going to stand for it. So thank you very much. We will get back to work. It's a ridiculous award. Listen, a fine of $355 million.
Okay, that was former President Donald Trump speaking outside in Palm Beach, Florida, outside of his Mar-a-Lago estate, obviously reacting in an inflammatory manner based on the judgment that was just handed down in that New York civil fraud case. We're going to bring in ABC News executive editorial producer John Santucci again. John, give me your reaction from what you're hearing from Donald Trump right now.
I mean, to be expected, Ike, right? Donald Trump has been extremely angry about this case more than anything. And listen, the reality is Donald Trump knew, and he said it at the top of his remarks, knew this was going to be a bad verdict. But I think the reality of how bad it is, right? The number of money that they now owe, the price tag, if you will, $354 million plus interest gets you well into the 400s. The fact that his 2 adult sons, Eric and Donald Trump Jr., have also been fined as part of this. The fact that his former CFO and comptroller have also been fined. But the other part of this, though, that I think is symbolic, and John Karl was hitting on this with you a couple moments ago, this case is the beginning of what has already been a reality we've seen physically, but legally a change in that this is a divorce. This is Donald Trump and New York State solidifying their divorce. He's no longer a New Yorker. He lives in Florida. All of his children live in Florida. They don't live in New York anymore. Donald Trump, who once bragged about Trump Tower and still does, but bragged about it in the sense that he would bring people up to the 26th floor of Trump Tower where his office is, and he would show people Central Park, Waltman Rink that he once repaired, the Plaza Hotel he owned at one point. That is what made Donald Trump. That image of the guy in New York who was so successful, he would often say, I'm really, really rich, and use even his time as the host of The Apprentice on NBC, that intro to show all of the Trump logos and brands and properties of how successful I am. That in many ways catapulted him. It was that star power that won him the White House in 2016 with voters across this country. But to think all of that has been stripped away, and I was having a conversation with somebody close to Donald Trump, and they said to me, just think about how different life was for all of us between now and 2015. The way that the company was, the way the business was, the amount of assets we had, where the family was living, it's all so very different. And that's why I think just to see that fire from Donald Trump, I mean, even when we just came on as he was still wrapping his remarks, just to see the red in his face, this is one that hurts.
Okay, let's bring in Chief Washington correspondent Jon Karl. John, I want to get back to you real quick. Trump said that there were no victims. He said he paid back his fines, paid back his loans, and that there were no victims. But we do know that he was able to secure loans from banks based on his inflated net worth. We heard Attorney General Letitia James say that that in and of itself hurt the surrounding communities around there. What's your take on that assertion that his inflated net worth, rather, did hurt those communities in the long run?
Well, first, before I directly address that, I just want to comment on his demeanor when he walked out and through that door. He walked slowly. He talked slowly. He repeated himself many times. And he was somewhat restrained in a way that I think revealed a rage inside. John mentioned the redness. My read, I've seen Donald Trump through a lot of chaos, through a lot of controversies, through crises, personal and political. That looks like a guy that is enraged by what just happened, and a guy who feels that what just happened might really hurt him, might get to him in a way that all the other stuff that he's dealt with, all the other investigations, all the other controversies, he's been able to skirt and to get around. I think that this has really, really affected him. Just again, reading the body language and knowing how he feels about the company that he built, as he mentioned, in New York, and they're really coming after him now in a way that is going to hurt. As for the victims, I mean, look, there are many levels in terms of the allegations here. One of the examples that was highlighted here was the Trump Hotel, Trump International on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. And the judge says that the evidence proves that Donald Trump never would have gotten the contract. That's a government property. That building's actually owned by the United States government, but they put up for bid to put a hotel there, and the company that won the bid would have a 99-year lease, effectively, controlling the things for a couple of lifetimes. And the Trump Organization surprised a lot of people by winning that bid. It's one of the most prized pieces of real estate in all of the nation's capital, and the judge said that the evidence proved that Donald Trump never would have gotten that bid if he hadn't lied about his balance sheet, if he hadn't misrepresented how much money he had and how much his other assets were worth. And that's why, you look at the number. This wasn't just a random number, $354 million that was pulled out. It was the court saying that this is the money that he was able to get through fraudulent means. So he got that contract. Now, there were other companies bidding on that piece of property to build that hotel in the old post office. He got it. Again, the judge says the evidence proves he got it through fraudulent means. When he sold the property after he left the White House, he made over $100 million in profit on that. Don Jr. Made a little over $4 million in profit on that. Eric Trump made a little over $4 million in profit. That's where the money, that's where those figures come from. That's why Don Jr. and Eric Trump were fined $4 million. It's actually not exactly $4 million. It's a little bit over. It's precisely the amount that they made when that hotel sold. So in each of these cases, he goes in and he does business. And if you get loans, if you make deals, if you're able to acquire property through fraudulent means, it means that somebody else isn't. I mean, there are winners and losers in each of these cases.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to bring in ABC News legal contributor and University of Baltimore law professor Kim Whaley. Kim, Trump's legal team is vowing to appeal this. What are the chances of it being successful?
The chances are very slim. The judge was careful to address all of the defenses, that the argument that it's the bank's fault, the argument that it was his accountant's fault. He walks through all of that. And he also says, listen, sometimes properties, there can be differences of opinion and valuation, but not by these margins, not by the extreme lies. For example, a triplex property that was he tripled the number of footage, that it was 10,000 feet, but Donald Trump's team said it was 30,000 feet. These are not difficult facts to demonstrate to an appellate court. Were well established by this judge. And then in the legal findings, again, he argues for elements that don't exist under New York law. So I think on appeal, he's probably going to lose. And in the interim, he's going to have to, under New York law, come up with the money in order to appeal or secure a bond. But under New York law, to get a bond, you have to either make good on your bond with a signature, and based on this verdict, or this judgment, that's unlikely anyone's going to give him that, or he has to put up collateral. So he's really in a pickle, even getting to the point where he can have an appeals court look at this very carefully rendered 92-page decision.
But Kim, I want to stick with you. Trump has essentially built his brand on wealth and success. Today is just another loss on his record. How is this going to play out moving forward in the eyes of voters?
That's just really stunning. It seems like voters look back on those years fondly, as somehow gas prices were better, and the groceries were better, and that basically he's this businessman that knows how to run the country better, like a business. And I think many people probably voted in 2016 on that aspiration, that mythology, and now you have him with this stunning ruling, $354 million worth of fraud plus interest, etc. But for his core voters, that's probably not going to move the needle, particularly given that he continues to attack the judge, to attack the legal system, to attack the judicial system. And people, I think, are just exhausted and confused. They don't really know the difference between law and politics, and that judges are bound by rules of evidence. There are appeals. There are procedures that ensure that garbage information doesn't go to the fact finder. But there's a lot of just lies about that, as much as there were lies in these statements of financial condition for his properties that duped lenders and insurance companies into giving him money that he wasn't entitled to.
All right, let's go back to Chief Washington correspondent Jon Karl. Jon, what's the next steps politically? Do you think he'll still maintain that firm grip on the Republican Party?
Well, there's no indication that that is going to change. But again, I think that in some ways, this case cuts at him in a way that's more immediate and more problematic than the legal cases, where he has a clear strategy. In all the criminal cases, it's a clear strategy of delay, try to push the cases until after the election, hope he can win the election, call off the federal case. But this gets at his own. We mentioned his image, but also his well-being. But what's interesting about this, and actually quite astounding, and something we've never seen any parallel like it in all of American history that I am aware of, is he is facing these severe defeats in court. So there's this case, there's the E. Jean Carroll case, twice E. Jean Carroll case. Massive amount of money. These are both civil cases. We haven't even gotten to the criminal cases yet, but clearly the drumbeat coming there as well. But even as that is happening, Donald Trump's grip on the Republican Party is as strong as it has ever been. I mean, arguably as strong as it was when he was president of the United States. And even just the past week or so, we've seen him effectively oust the chairwoman of the Republican Party, Ronna McDaniel. He's got a hand-picked successor that is all but certain to be the next leader of the RNC. He wants his daughter-in-law to be the co-chair of the party. That's almost certainly going to happen. We've seen him run through, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina's coming up a week from Saturday. He's way ahead in the polls there. Next, we go to Super Tuesday. He's way ahead in virtually everywhere for the Republican nomination. So, whether or not this will change any of that, it would be pretty. You'd be pretty hard pressed to predict it would when nothing else has changed that. But again, how does he react? Is there any prospect for appeal? If he loses, if he has no prospect for appeal, and he's going to have to find a way to pay this fine, it is accruing interest, as Tish James mentioned, that this fine is going to accrue interest until it's paid. I mean, the walls, at least in a personal financial sense, could be really closing in on Donald Trump. Whether or not that'll affect anything in terms of his political standing among Republicans, who knows? Nothing else has to this point.
John, thank you very much for the analysis. Let's bring in ABC News executive editorial producer John Santucci. John, we've seen this before. Trump is already fundraising off of this decision. What's your take on that?
I mean, rinse, repeat, Ike. I mean, Donald Trump did this every time there was an indictment over the summer of 2023, and it was a big boon for Donald Trump's presidential campaign, his super PAC. Much of that money eventually went to pay Donald Trump's legal bills. In calendar year 2023, Ike, $50 million that Donald Trump raised off of small donors came from those emails, from those blasts, and eventually paid his legal bills. All these cases that are going on up and down the East Coast. And the reality is, Donald Trump needs to keep that train a-going because he's got a trial beginning next month in New York. He's got an appeal that's heading to the Supreme Court in the special counsel's probe. And obviously the other two cases, Georgia and the documents case, which we're still trying to figure out if those are going to happen sometime this year. This is how Donald Trump is going to campaign in 2024. It is taking the courthouse and bringing it to the campaign trail. And Donald Trump knows that. It is a winning strategy for Donald Trump. Look, John Carl just outlined it best, right? To think that a guy that has 91 criminal counts, indictments against him, is somehow not only the leading candidate, but the leader of the party. He has a death grip on the RNC, as John just outlined with you. That is something that a year ago, I could have never predicted that.
And John, you said it yourself, so many cases for Donald Trump coming up. But the primary season heating up. We have colliding calendars here. How will that affect the primary?
Well, I don't think it really affects the primary on one condition. What happens with Nikki Haley, right? Because obviously we've got South Carolina where all of the polling indicates that Donald Trump is expected to run away with it, but you got to wait and see. So we've got a week to go there. Super Tuesday, there's obviously many contests to come. I don't think some miracle happens and Nikki Haley suddenly surges ahead. So the question is, though, if Nikki Haley stays in and you still have primaries to campaign in and Donald Trump has to be in a courtroom for that Manhattan trial, because, Ike, this is a very important and big difference between everything we've seen so far. The civil case, the E. Jean Carroll case, Donald Trump did not need to be in court for any of those proceedings. He felt like it. He showed up when he wanted to. Michael Cohen was on the stage. He wanted to antagonize him. He showed it up. But a criminal case, we're in a whole different ball game. When you are in a criminal case and you are the defendant, defendant, you need to be there every single day. And we learned just yesterday, Ike, 6 weeks. That is how long that criminal case in Manhattan is going to take.
Thank you, John and Kim.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.